Hi, my name is Manish Bapat. I look after product marketing at EMC. What we'll talk about today is how to have a very efficient storage infrastructure that will allow you to save cost, not sacrifice on the performance, and help you consolidate your resources. I think the fundamental decision that any organization needs to make is how do we classify information? What is the value of information at any point in time? And it is a value of information that will govern the technology part of it. So I comes before the T to start with. So what we see here is how information moves through the life cycle from creation all the way to disposition over time. There are fundamental rules of information that all the customers follow, which is an information is created, it has a specific value, the value of information changes over time, and gradually that information is disposed of. The tricky part is that, number one, it's not always a unidirectional movement. The value increases over time and decreases over time. The other part is that this is not always consistent. For example, if you trace the blue line here, you'll see that when the information got created, it gained value as the business needed it, and over time the value fell down till the time it was ready for disposition. But guess what happened in between? For example, let's talk of a telecom scenario where we talk of call data records. All the calls that we made on our mobile phone are recorded by the telecom operator. Till the time the telecom operator billed you, the value was very high. After that, the value went down, and it was all the way down till it got disposed of. Now the funny part is that in between there was a regulatory need because maybe the police inquired about certain calls being made by certain individuals, and that very piece of information gained value again at a different point in time, and now this value kept fluctuating in between till the time it finally got disposed. The trick is how do you manage the entire life cycle of information where you know that the value can change or cannot change over time, and then map it back to your technology. So having seen the information part of it, how the value changes, let's move to the technology part of it. How do we deploy it in an infrastructure? So what we see here is a typical storage and all types of tiers. Now tiering is one part of it. That's just the beginning of any storage infrastructure and optimizing it. What do you mean by tiers? Tier 1, predominantly high speed but high cost, right? And then tier 2 and tier 3, which are high capacity and slightly lower cost. The speed might be lower than the tier 1. The challenge in optimizing your infrastructure is how do we map this technology back to the information life cycle that we talked of earlier? How do we ensure that when the information value is high, it's on tier 1 and then gradually moves down to tier 2 and tier 3 and then down to the backup and archive subsystem? The movement of this information is critical. So one part is tiering. You have options of tier 1, which is fiber channel. You have tier 2, which typically gets deployed around SATA. You have tier 3, which gets deployed around low power SATA. Some vendors now have options of putting tier 0 in the infrastructure, which will be flash drive. Now how do I use some very high cost flash drives into a storage? Now that's the challenge because we are talking of reducing the cost. But what is important to remember is that we don't put everything on tier 0. What we possibly put is maybe the indexes of your databases, which will make the database faster. The database might still reside on tier 1. That is how you optimize your infrastructure and how you optimize it to ensure that you get the best performance. The lower value data keeps moving on to the tier 2 and tier 3. The challenge here is automation. This can't be a manual movement. It has to move through the life cycle in an automated fashion without any intervention. The other part is from a consolidation perspective, which is connectivity. When you connect to multiple servers and consolidate your storage and the requirements go on increasing, how do we increase the performance of the storage? Is there a way in which we can have multiple types of connectivities and a scalable connectivity? For example, based on the life cycle of information, you must have figured out that probably half the servers need fiber channel connectivity and the other half needs iSCSI. Can we have a storage that can accommodate both from a connectivity perspective in one box itself? Secondly, as the number of servers increase and the performance needs to increase, can we add more connectivity to the storage? And finally, as we get past this thing, it is most important to understand that there's also a backup and archive subsystem. Archive to move your older data, which can be retained till disposition, and backup to ensure that any problems at this level, you have a point to restore. And for this, I'm sure you would have looked up the backup and archive video that we had earlier on. And so what we saw is first and most primary thing is how do we attach value to that piece of information. How does the value change as part of the information lifecycle? Then mapping that value back to the technology. How can we tier? How can we ensure a scalable system that can give you more performance? More importantly, as part of consolidation and optimization activity, are there intelligent software that can automatically move your data based on the value of information? How is the power consumption going to be? If flash drives are expensive, they consume 98% less power. For example, low power SATA drives will consume 32% less power than a traditional SATA drive. So all these things matter when it comes to power consumption. So most importantly, look at the life cycle of information, look at the infrastructure you have, look at all the software automation that you can put into it for intelligent movement of data, and finally look at the power consumption aspects of your storage. My name is Manish Bapat, looking after product marketing in South Asia for EMC. Thank you for listening in to us. Thank you.